The calls that shouldn't exist. A 911 dispatcher's 30-year mystery. Sarah Martinez had answered 47,000 emergency calls in 30 years. But there was one address that haunted every shift. 1247 West Addison Street, apartment 4B. The calls started in 1994. The building had been demolished in 1987, 7 years before the first call ever came through. The callers weren't random voices. They were real people. People whose names matched death certificates. People who had died decades before they picked up phones that shouldn't have existed. The first call, November 1994, quiet Tuesday night. Sarah's first month on the job. Coffee getting cold, rain against the windows, the dispatch room humming with routine emergencies. Then her line rang. The system registered automatically. 1247 West Addison Street, apartment 4B. "Hello, 911, what's your emergency?" An elderly woman's voice, clear despite obvious distress. Something about the quality disturbed Sarah. Too vivid, too present. Like the woman was standing beside her instead of speaking through decades-old phone lines. "My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson in 4C. She's having chest pains. She can't breathe. Please send someone quickly." Standard protocol, details gathered, ambulance dispatched. But the caller's knowledge was extraordinary. She described Mrs. Patterson's medical history with precision. Previous heart episodes, medications, family members, information that would later prove accurate with hospital records from 1981. This is exactly the point where I personally would have hesitated. "What's your name, ma'am?" "Dorothy Henrick, apartment 4B. I've lived here 30 years. I know these people." The ambulance arrived at 1247 West Addison Street. Empty lot. Overgrown weeds reaching waist-high. Chain-link fence rusted and bent. No foundation, no debris, no sign a building had ever existed. "Dispatch, we're at the location. There's no building here." Sarah stared at her screen. GPS coordinates matched perfectly. Computer showed a 4-story apartment complex. 17 units. Dorothy Henrick, apartment 4B. She called her supervisor. That's when they discovered Dorothy Henrick had died of pneumonia on March 15, 1983, 11 years before she called 911, but Sarah could still hear her voice in her head. Warm, concerned, alive. The pattern emerges. The calls didn't stop, they increased. Sarah began documenting everything. Timestamps, voice recordings, GPS data, every impossible detail. March 1995, 2:17 a.m., James Mueller, apartment 2A. His voice deep and worried. "Someone's breaking into 2C. Mrs. Rodriguez is alone. She's scared to call herself." Units dispatched. Empty lot. But 3 blocks away, officers found burglars attempting to break into an apartment where an elderly Hispanic woman lived alone. Mrs. Rodriguez. Exactly matching the description James Mueller had provided. James Mueller died in 1979 during a home invasion, beaten to death while trying to reach his phone. To me, this decision feels more emotional than strategic. June 1995, 11:43 p.m. Rosa Delgado, apartment 3C. Her voice young, panicked, accent thick with fear. "My baby, he's burning up. Fever. Won't stop crying. Please, send help." Sarah could hear the infant crying in the background. Real, immediate, desperate. Paramedics found the lot empty. But their radio picked up a call from 2 miles south. Hispanic woman with a sick infant. Temperature 104 degrees. Emergency intervention saved the child's life. Rosa Delgado and her infant son died in an apartment fire in 1981. September 1995. William Patterson, chest pains. Apartment 4C. Can't catch my breath. Heart pounding. His voice growing weaker during the call. Sarah stayed on the line, talking him through breathing exercises. keeping him calm until paramedics arrived. They found empty space, but her words had reached someone. A man 5 blocks away called 911 with identical symptoms. Paramedics arrived in time. Heart attack. Survived. William Patterson died in 1985. Alone. Heart attack. No one found him for 3 days. Each call contained impossible accuracy. Medical conditions, neighbor relationships, apartment layouts, information that shouldn't exist. Some people might disagree, but I don't see this as a rational move. Sarah's supervisor, Captain Morrison, initiated the Addison Street protocol. Every call from those coordinates received immediate response, but they also began keeping separate files, special documentation, questions no one wanted to ask aloud. The investigation. Detective Michael Torres received the assignment in 1997. Thick file folder. Determine source of fraudulent 911 calls from 1247 West Addison Street. Torres was methodical, skeptical, 20-year veteran who'd seen every scam. The building's history was straightforward. 4-story apartment complex, built 1952. 16 units, working-class families, immigrants, retirees, young couples starting out. Structural problems developed in the early 1980s. Electrical issues, plumbing failures. City condemned the building in 1986. Demolished February 1987. Torres interviewed surviving residents. Their memories were clear. Marie Kowalski, apartment 3A. Dorothy was sweet, always checking on people. When Mrs. Patterson got sick, Dorothy would bring her soup. Frank Castellanos, apartment 1B. James Mueller worked security downtown, paranoid about break-ins, always listening for trouble. Rebecca Johnson, apartment 3B. Rosa was so young, beautiful baby boy. She worried constantly about his health. If I were there myself, fear alone might have stopped me. Every detail matched the 911 calls perfectly. Names, relationships, personalities, medical concerns. But every caller was dead. Torres decided to stake out the lot. November 15th, 1997, 1:30 a.m., positioned across the street in his unmarked car. Nothing visible happened, but his radio filled with static. Car's GPS showed a building where he saw empty space. His cell phone picked up fragments of conversation, muffled voices discussing neighbor problems, medical emergencies, domestic disputes. He moved 50 feet away. Silence. He returned to the exact coordinates. Voices resumed. Torres submitted his report 3 months later. Source of calls unknown. Recommend continued monitoring. The building's deeper history. Torres dug deeper into city records. The apartment building's foundation rested on a previous structure. Cook County Emergency Hospital, 1923 to 1949. February 7th, 1949. Electrical fire. Winter storm prevented quick response. Fire trucks couldn't navigate icy streets. 27 people died. 23 patients. 4 staff members. Most died trying to reach telephones. Hospital communication system failed in the first minutes. Patients trapped on upper floors, unable to call for help. This part of the story shows how fear can quietly reshape decisions. The apartment building was constructed directly over the hospital foundation. Same electrical infrastructure, same communication lines. Building inspector reports documented strange problems throughout the 1970s and 1980s. Phones ringing in empty apartments, lights turning on in vacant units, heating systems activating without explanation. Frank Morrison, building superintendent, kept detailed logs. Every incident, every complaint, every unexplained occurrence. His final entry, December 15th, 1985. Mrs. Henrick in 4B complained about voices in the walls again. Checked the apartment, nothing there. But I heard them too. Morrison died of a heart attack that night. Sarah's grow-in connection. By 1998, Sarah recognized the voices. Dorothy Henrick called most frequently, always concerned about others, never about herself. "Sarah, dear," Dorothy would say, "there's going to be trouble at the grocery store on Madison. Send someone to check on Mr. Chen." Sarah dispatched units. They'd find Mr. Chen collapsed behind the counter. Heart episode. Alive because Dorothy cared about a stranger she'd never met. James Mueller called about violent crimes before they happened. His voice forever vigilant. "Sarah, listen careful. Blue sedan heading south on Clark. License starts with VR7. Driver's drunk. Gonna hit someone." Traffic units intercepted the vehicle. DUI arrest. Potential fatal accident prevented. Maybe I'm overly cautious, but I wouldn't have done this. Rosa Delgado called about children in danger, her voice young and urgent, maternal instincts transcending death. The baby on Elm Street, third-floor apartment. Parents are fighting. Baby's crying. No one's listening. Social services responded. Found infant neglect situation. Child removed to safety. Sarah began looking forward to the calls. Strange comfort in voices that shouldn't exist. The medical examiner's discovery. Dr. Elena Rodriguez reviewed the death certificates in 1999. Every caller had died under circumstances where emergency services could have saved them, but failed to arrive in time. Dorothy Henrick, heart attack, alone in apartment 4B, found 3 days later. Death certificate showed she survived hours after the initial cardiac event. Long enough for intervention. She was found near her phone, receiver off the hook, dial tone still humming. James Mueller, home invasion, 1979. Neighbors heard screaming, couldn't locate the source. Found 12 hours later, survived initial attack, bled to death trying to reach his phone. Line had been cut. Rosa Delgado and infant son, apartment fire, faulty wiring. They survived the initial blaze, trapped when smoke blocked escape routes, found near the phone, melted by heat. She'd been trying to call 911 when she died. I can't be certain, but this choice feels like trouble waiting to happen. Dr. Rodriguez documented her findings. Each death represented emergency response system failure. Now they were improving the system from beyond death. The technology deepens. Telecommunications specialist Marcus Webb investigated in 2008. His findings challenged everything. The calls originated from infrastructure that didn't exist. All wiring had been removed, junction boxes stripped, switching equipment demolished. Yet his instruments detected active telephone signals, not cellular, not internet. Landline characteristics impossible to replicate with modern technology. Digital analysis revealed the calls aged in real time. Dorothy Henrick's voice grew frailer over the years. James Mueller's voice carried more weariness. Rosa Delgado's maternal concern deepened. Personally, this feels like the moment where things started to go wrong. The signals were self-generating, created temporary communication pathways during each call, then vanished without leaving traces. Webb's equipment detected electrical patterns consistent with a fully occupied building. Power consumption for 17 apartments, multiple phone lines, cable television signals, all emanating from empty air. The calls evolve. 2018. Sarah returned to dispatch after a 5-year retirement. The calls had changed, no longer just past emergencies. They described events that hadn't happened yet. August 2019. Dorothy Henrick's voice weaker, but still warm. "Sarah, dear, fire's coming to the warehouse next door, tomorrow night. Electrical problem in the basement. Send them to check." Fire department found faulty wiring, repaired before it could ignite. Potential disaster prevented. October 2020. James Mueller more urgent than usual. 2 men with guns Parking lot behind the convenience store. Tonight, 11:30, they're planning something bad. Police position surveillance. Arrested armed robbery suspects. Exact time. Exact location. This is where I personally wouldn't have taken the risk. March 2021. Rosa Delgado crying. The babies, storm coming, families trapped, building on Roosevelt. Tell them to check the heating systems. Unprecedented blizzard struck that night. Multiple families with infants trapped by power failures. Emergency services prepared. No deaths. The dead residents weren't reliving past emergencies. They were preventing future ones. Current protocols. 2024. Chicago 911 receives 4 calls monthly from 1247 West Addison Street. Different voices, people who died in the building between 1983 and 1987. Sarah handles them all. 30 years of impossible conversations. Internal protocols give these calls highest priority. Information proves reliable for preventing emergencies throughout the city. Sarah claims over 400 calls from the demolished building. Each caller thanks her by name, despite never identifying herself. This part of the story always makes me stop and think. October 13th, 2024. Most recent call. New voice. Robert Chen. Apartment 2B. Older man, gentle accent. The dispatcher lady deserves recognition, but she needs to tell people what she's learned. Robert Chen died in the January 1986 building fire. Led to condemnation and demolition. No record of Robert Chen ever living at 1247 West Addison Street. The psychological weight. Dr. Janet Morrison counseled dispatch workers handling the calls. Unique mental health challenges. Communicating with dead people integrated into daily routines. Training never prepared anyone for regular conversations with voices that shouldn't exist. Sarah developed emotional attachments to regular callers. Dorothy's maternal warmth. James's protective vigilance. Rosa's nurturing concern. If I were in their place, I probably would have taken the easier option. Other dispatchers struggled differently. Some requested transfers. Others found comfort in the connections. The calls consistently provided accurate information, saving real lives. Impossible to dismiss as hallucinations when emergency information proved legitimate. The expanding pattern. Recent developments disturb established patterns. New voices call from addresses that never existed. People who died nearby during the same period. Communication range expanding. Entire city block generating calls. Future emergency information arrives weeks in advance. Dead residents possess knowledge of events that haven't occurred. Chicago's emergency response system quietly adapts. Dispatch workers trained to handle temporal displacement calls. Official protocols never acknowledge their true nature. This is the moment where logic and emotion seem to collide. Similar reports emerge from Detroit, Atlanta, San Francisco. Emergency calls from demolished buildings. Former residents reaching across death to serve their communities. Sarah's final months. Sarah works her last year before retirement. 30 years of impossible conversations weigh on her. The dispatch room at 2 a.m., police radio chatter, ambulance reports, then her line rings. 1247 West Addison Street, apartment 4B. Hello 911, what's your emergency? Dorothy Henrick's voice. Frailer now, but still caring. Sarah dear, trouble coming to Clark Street. Convenience store with blue awning. Check the back room, gas leak. Sarah dispatches units. Gas leak discovered. Night clerk evacuated. Another life saved. Personally, I think this single choice changed everything. The line goes quiet. Sarah stares at her screen. GPS coordinates, insisting a building exists. 17 apartments. 43 residents. All waiting for emergencies that need their help. 3 months until retirement. Someone else will answer these calls. Someone else will learn that some emergencies transcend death. The night shift reality. Every night, Sarah prepares for the impossible. Notebook ready, pen uncapped, heart steady for voices that shouldn't exist. The calls come like clockwork. 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. Always emergencies, always accurate, always saving someone. She's memorized their patterns. Dorothy calls Tuesdays and Fridays. James prefers weekends when crime increases. Rosa calls when children are in danger. Maybe I'm overly cautious, but I wouldn't have done this. New voices join the rotation, building residents she never met in life. But their dedication to protecting the living remains constant. Each call ends the same way. Thank you, Sarah. Remember us. The recognition. October 2024. Local news discovers the Addison Street calls. Requests interviews. City officials decline comment. Sarah receives commendation for exceptional service preventing emergencies. They don't mention how she receives advance warning. The commendation ceremony feels surreal. Recognition for impossible conversations. Praise for cooperation with the dead. If I were there, my first instinct would have been to look for an exit. That night, Dorothy calls again. Sarah, dear, you did good. People need to know. Some emergencies require help from both sides. Both sides, living and dead, working together to save lives. Final preparations. Sarah trains her replacement. Young woman named Jennifer. Eager, capable, unprepared for voices from demolished buildings. When the calls come from Addison Street, listen carefully. Don't question the source. Trust the information. Save the lives. Jennifer nods, still doesn't understand. The first call will change everything. Dorothy's warm voice welcoming another protector. James's vigilant warnings. Rosa's maternal concern. This part of the story shows how fear can quietly reshape decisions. Sarah removes personal items from her desk. Notebook filled with impossible conversations. Evidence of 30 years communicating with the dead. Tomorrow, Jennifer sits in this chair, takes these calls, learns that emergency response requires cooperation between worlds. The last call, December 31st, 2024. Sarah's final shift. Midnight approaching. New year, new dispatcher. Her line rings one last time. 1247 West Addison Street, apartment 4B. Hello 911, what's your emergency? Multiple voices this time. Dorothy, James, Rosa, others she's grown to know. Sarah, thank you, rest now. We'll watch over the city. And Jennifer, we'll teach her like we taught you. The line goes quiet. Sarah removes her headset. This is where I personally wouldn't have taken the risk. Outside, Chicago prepares for New Year. Inside the dispatch center, impossible conversations continue. Voices from demolished buildings protecting the living. Sarah walks to her car. Behind her, Jennifer sits down, adjusts her headset, waits for her first call from people who died decades ago. The building may be gone, but the watch continues. One emergency call at a time. The continuing legacy. Sarah locks her desk drawer. Inside, a notebook filled with names, dates, and conversations that shouldn't exist. Jennifer will start her own notebook soon, document her own impossible conversations. Learn that some protectors never stop serving. Tomorrow night, phones will ring in a dispatch center. Voices will call from addresses that don't exist, and someone will answer. Personally, I think this single choice changed everything. Because that's what you do when the dead need help saving the living. Even when you're not sure who's really saving whom. The empty lot remains empty. Weeds grow, fence rusts. But inside coordinates that insist otherwise, 43 residents maintain their watch, waiting for emergencies, ready to help. Forever serving their community from a building that exists only in the space between life and death. Sarah drives home through quiet streets. Behind her, the dispatch center glows. Jennifer's voice echoes through the night. "Hello, 911, what's your emergency?" The calls continue. They always continue. Because some watches never end.